All right. Good afternoon, Maine. Jeez, boy, apologize for my voice, but this is Chuck Ellis, and you're watching the Muddy Waters podcast. Today, we are blessed to have with us Joshua Tabor, who is the leader of the Maine Girl Dads, amongst other things. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's glad to be here.
Yeah. So as we always do, trying to interview people from around the state to better understand what's going on and help the people of Maine, have cases and hear things that they can use and be like, no, I know that this is happening because I heard it. Here's a story. I wanted to have you on partly because you're the head of the Maine Girl Dads, but you're also you have a history where you've been an administrator, so you know what it's like to be an administrator in schools, and you're currently a teacher, and you're currently on a school board. So you've got a lot of relevant experience to a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on around our state. So, I feel like you've got a lot of expertise and experience, and it'll be fun. So, kind of to start, I just want to hear your story. Like, where did you come? Again, I know that and you can get into this, but you're originally from Maine, and you've kind of moved around a little bit, and you've had a couple of interesting, challenging things with your own family. So, like, who are you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question.
But
thank you for that question. That's a great question. It's a great place to start, right? So I grew up in southern Maine. North Berwick, Maine is where I grew up. It's where I actually currently reside now. I grew up in a family of 6, so I have 3 siblings, right? I'm kind of a middle child, right? So I may have that middle child syndrome where you're always seeking attention. I don't know if that's true or not, but so anyways, grew up, went to school here at Noble, MSAD 60, where I reside. Graduated, went to school, became a teacher through school, worked in Somersworth, New Hampshire as a high school teacher, Kingswood as a middle school teacher. And then my wife and I at that time decided we wanted to pursue master's degrees. And so we actually moved to Pennsylvania to get our master's degrees. And when we were in Pennsylvania, we got our master's degrees. Mine was in school administration, and I was immediately hired as an assistant principal. So I was an assistant principal, and I'm telling the story really quick. I was an assistant principal in 7th through 12th grade school, so junior, senior high school. I did that for 4 years, and then I was promoted to elementary principal and the district's transportation coordinator. So I took care of all the busing, all the vans, all the extracurriculars, and was the principal of a building with 340 students in it at that time, plus a couple outside programs like Pre-K Counts, which is a pre-K program, and some an autism classroom in a high needs behavior classroom in my building. So that was an incredible load. That was an incredible load to take on as a principal. I did that for 2.5 years and decided it was too much. I was not seeing my kids as much as I wanted to, and I'm a dad first. I mean, that was really hard. So we ended up moving towards more the middle of Pennsylvania, where I became the elementary principal of 2 buildings. So together, the 2 buildings was about 320 kids between the two buildings. They were like 20 miles apart. And I did that for 6 years. And then, very simply put, my wife no longer wanted to be married. And so she left. She followed our pastor to Michigan and left me with our 4 daughters. And so that year I was, that was the COVID year. So I was the principal. Yeah, I was the principal of an elementary building. We were in person 4 days a week, and we were virtual on the Friday. And there was a reason for that, but we were virtual on Friday, so 4 days a week in person, masking and all those different things. And so that was a really tough year. Obviously, did some soul searching, spoke to got some professional help, and basically it was, hey, this is my opportunity to come home. I never wanted to leave Maine. I have such fond memories of Maine. Just great memories of being a kid in Maine, and I wanted to give my kids that. So actually moved here, and in the process of moving here, the simple way is to say, the legal system is not friendly to fathers when it comes to parenting, and so my daughters have their physical residence actually in Michigan, and that's where they go to school. And the number one factor when it came down to that, everything was equal except the school in Michigan was several times better than the school in Maine. And I don't think it's a surprise to anybody if you've been paying attention. Maine school rankings are not good. They're not in a good place. They were when I graduated in the 1990s. We were in the top of the nation, and now they're not. They've fallen significantly. And so when that happened, that drove me to run for the board, right? If you don't like it, you should do something about it, right? And so that's exactly what I did. Ran for the board. I was actually the first write-in candidate in my town to ever win an elected office. So I've been on the board, and I've been a thorn in the board side, the administration side, ever since I've been there, and proud of it.
Awesome. So when you were a write, were you running against somebody who was not a write-in?
No, yeah, I was running against the incumbent. The incumbent had been, I think they were on the board for 9 years. They had been a 9-year incumbent, and I ran a write-in candidacy and won.
That's pretty incredible, and not to, I don't want to, I want to make sure that doesn't go unnoticed, right? To like
Mm-hmm.
win against somebody who's on the ballot when you're not on the ballot, and people have to go in there intentionally to write your name in.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's real, especially against an incumbent. It's tough to do in the first place because
yeah.
most people show up to those things unless it was just a school board vote. But like most people show up to vote, they don't even know what they're voting for. Was so was there anything else on the ballot, or was it just a school board thing?
So it was school board and other elected offices, right? So you have
There
the
were.
town offices, your town selectmen, cemetery, sanitation department. There's several town type things, but that's what it was. And in North Berwick, it is essentially it is positions. That's what the election happens. It happens in April, and then budgets are approved in June. We actually vote
Oh,
two
okay.
different times. But what's nice about small towns in Maine, it's filled with small towns, is you don't need that many votes. You really need to convince
Yep.
200-300 people to put your name on there. So I'm blessed with a relatively simple name, Josh Tabor, not really that hard. And what we did is we did signs, and I had a great team. I had a local artist who we had conversations. She loved it, and so we made all kinds of pieces of plywood. And so we just did the elementary theme, with the two lines with the dotted line in the middle, and it said "Write in Josh Tabor" right on the line for school board. I had so many people that said those are some great signs, great job.
Yeah.
And I visited the transfer station and I handed out papers. I did that for 3 weekends before, and so I saw a lot of people. A lot of people asked me questions. I answered their questions as best I could. And I think the driving force was I know what I'm talking about when it comes to schools. I'm not just some person who's just like, hey, I just want to get involved. No, I know what needs to be done, and not saying that I'm the one to run the district, but I know what a school board's responsibility is. And it's three things: it's budget, it's superintendent evaluation, and it's policy. Everything else is superintendent. You let them handle it. But when it comes to those things, anything in those three, and that's a lot for a school board to do if they're focused on the right things.
Yeah.
And our school board is so not focused on the right things. It's really frustrating.
Like many school boards around Maine, really.
Very true. Very true. But, I know the Maine Education Institute is working really hard to change that. They're really working hard to train people to become aware of what their authority is. And so give credit to them. They really are doing a great job, and they're available for training. And I hope if this is talking to anyone that resonates and you're wanting to be a school member, look up the Maine, Education Initiative and look at what they can do and what they can offer you. It's a great program.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Heidi Sampson and what she's doing with that, as well as a number of other people who are involved. Alan Sarvinas. I actually went to a school board candidate training. I don't think I'm running for school board. I've got too many other things going on, but like I wanted to at least be aware of not yet, be aware of the process. Well, with what I've currently got going on, it would probably be unwise to run for school board. Not opposed to it, but I at least wanted to kind of get more ingrained in the process and hear more about some of the details, if that makes sense. And that they put on great trainings to help you figure out how to run a campaign. They have more trainings that are around your roles and responsibilities. So if you're currently a school board member out there and you feel like you're not being supported, that's people to reach out to. Heidi Sampson, reach out to myself. I can get you connected. Alan Sarvinas. Because there are resources. They can give you legal counsel. They have access to legal counsel. They can help people understand what the role of the school board is and what it's not. And I think you and I were talking earlier, and you made the comment, like, you, especially being a school board member, makes a lot of sense because you have been an administrator, you are a teacher, you understand what's going on in the school systems and know what should be going on in the school systems and how the process is supposed to work. So like you have how could people vote against you, I guess is the question, right? You're one of the most qualified people that's probably ever been on a school board. I mean, there may be exceptions, but
thanks. Humility there.
Well, I mean, but it's just a reality. This is why, like, for them, what can they say against you? You know what I mean? That's kind of my point. What can the left use? That's what I always think about. What can the other side use? Like, what do you know? I mean, I guess with you, they could say, well, you don't have kids in the school district, and your easy response is, but I would like to,
Yeah,
right?
actually, they asked me a couple different questions that were really common. Number one, I was asked whether I was Democrat or Republican, and I said I operate my life in a conservative way. That was my response to them,
Yeah,
and they're like, okay. And I said, and when it comes to finances, I think that's a good thing. When it comes to our budget, our school district budget, and all that, I said, I think this is a good thing. I said, what concerns you really? Like, what's really bothering you? And then they would tell me, right? And then I was able to speak on those things. It really comes to you really need to listen, do a good job of listening, and show the person that you're talking to that you're listening to them, right? I heard a lot of people just saying, like, look, I'm having a hard time staying in my home because taxes keep going up, right? And they're like, and I understand schools need to be paid and teachers need to be paid and all that, but man, it's getting hard. And I go, yeah, okay, I hear you, and I have parents of my own that are in their 70s, and so I get what that's like. My big thing is return on investment, because taxes are an investment, especially when it comes to schools. We are investing in our kids.
yeah,
So are we happy with the product that's being provided? And you hear from people all the time. They're like, well, kids can't make change. They don't know how to work. They just stare at their cell phone all the time. They're not on time. They're unreliable. You hear all this stuff and you're like, so we're operating our district in a way, right? At least to some extent, that's permissive of those behaviors.
yeah.
That's not
Well,
okay.
I was talking to a business owner today about they're having some staff. They've historically had staffing issues, and I was catching up with him. I hadn't seen him in a while. Sorry about my voice again. But there are some people that I knew that were millennials. Oh no, sorry, Gen Z. So we're Gen Z kids they had started their own business, and they got these ideas, and I'd made a connection a while back, and for a while it worked, and then and I was asking him about it, and he's like, well, I can't work with them anymore. And I was like, well, what happened? And he's like, well, and this is an experience he's having with a number of different people. These Gen Z kids, if you don't, they will do what you tell them to do and nothing more, nothing less, right? And these are some of the more entrepreneurial Gen Z. So we're not talking about the ones that want to sit at home and just play video games. These guys are trying to start their own business. They have these ideas, but they're not like really like even them, they're struggling to be motivated. And this is what we see across the board is like one of the things that I used to say, I think millennials are guilty of this too, a little bit worse with Gen Z, is they expect to be paid very well as though they were a 40-year veteran of the
Yep.
industry.
Yep.
They expect you to roll out the red carpet, treat them amazing because they are so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they have anything difficult come up, they expect you to stand over their shoulder and show them how to do it over and over and over again. And then they expect to be praised for the work that you helped them do.
Isn't that crazy? Sounds like a classroom.
Yeah, it sounds like there's something wrong with our education system.
Yeah.
That's because if its job is to prepare them for life, so that not only so that they can get a job, but that is a big part of it, but also so that they can be they can be contributing members of society. They can handle difficult things. They can problem solve. That you shouldn't have to like. They should be able to figure out some things for themselves. You say, I need this done. They should look at it and be like, I don't just want to do it to the letter. I want to do a really high quality job, and so I'm going to look at how I can improve the process. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That should be naturally part of what people do when they're given a task. But that's not what we're getting, and so we know that the result, scores aside, that's where like this other crew of people. I said I wasn't going to talk too much, and look at me go. But anyway, but you got this other crew of people that are like, well, we don't, I don't care about those scores. I know my kids. I know they're smart and I know they're kind. And it's like, okay, they don't pass the eye test. Even if you want to claim that standardized tests are not a great measure of a student, blah, 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 blah. There is the eye test. And we see like what we see happening. As you mentioned, these parents, these people, as you're going door to door, are like, well, they can't count. They can't, give proper change. And it's like, they can't give proper change. I mean, that's like bare minimum. That's the easiest thing. What can they do? I guess is the question, right?
And I'm a high school math teacher, so my biggest frustration with almost every single high school math teacher that you'll ever speak to is the kids don't know their facts, right? So we're trying to
Yeah.
teach them high level advanced math concepts, in like they don't know their facts at a comfortable level. So what I equate that to, when you learn to read, you learn what all the letters can identify all the letters, and then you learn all the sounds of the letters, right? And then you learn, okay, there are certain pairings of letters that go together and make certain sounds, right? And then all these groups of sounds come together, and so you learn to decode words, and eventually you decode words and you get so familiar with the words and the patterns that you're able to read fluently. I mean, that's like a really fast way of teaching reading, right?
Yep.
Math is the same thing, but we don't treat it the same way, right? In our elementary schools, we don't require kids to know their facts cold, like we require them to know their sounds of the letters and the pairings of letters to read fluently. Doing math well, like when you get in middle school and high school, if you want to do math well, you have to know your math facts fluently. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, less than 3 seconds, every single problem. And we constantly send kids on to the next grade level who are not fluent in basic math skills. And it's killing our middle school and high school math programs. And no one wants to talk about it. Drives me nuts. They're like, well, we can't retain kids because then they're going to drop out. Or we can't hold a kid back because of that. Well, we can't make them do their homework. We can't. Well, instead of focusing on all the things we can't do, let's focus on the things that we can do. And this is one of the things that I did when I was an elementary principal. I had a conversation with my third grade teacher, and she was lamenting. She's like, "Man, some of the kids really don't know their facts, and I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're being honest. That's great." And so all we did was we talked about interviewing kids, right? That was what I wanted to do. I had done some reading and looking at it, and so I taught her the interview process. She interviewed the kids, found out exactly what their issues were. She taught to those weaknesses, taught them the strategies that they needed. And at the end of the year, we had one kid who didn't know their math facts fluently. One out of a class of 23 kids, I think it was. And that one kid had a cognitive level of kindergarten. So that makes sense, actually, right? You had an IEP, you had a pretty rigorous IEP to help. That was the one kid who didn't know his math facts fluently. And he had made great progress. He wasn't it? Everyone else did. So I do not believe the rhetoric when it comes to, well, some kids just don't know their math facts. Yeah, like maybe the one with a significant cognitive deficit, but everybody else can. And we're making it so much harder on our students. I talk to high schoolers all the time, and I'm like, you need to know your math facts. They're like, why? I don't. And I said, well, it's time. Like, there's no time like the present. You learn in every other class. I'm sure you can learn this too. I'm hard on them. I'm hard on the kids because teachers need to be hard on kids. I have colleagues who are great. They're fantastic teachers. They hold kids to high standards, and I love them for it. And then I have colleagues who hold kids' hands and coddle them all the way through every single project, every single assignment, and it's absolutely wrecking our younger generation. It is not helping. Coddling kids is not helping at all. And shame on the education system for allowing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of my biggest frustrations is that because what are you actually doing in that situation? What is the end result? What is the purpose of education but to make sure that kids graduate with a certain base? I think you'd use the word facts, base level of facts and knowledge and understanding of these different subjects. They need to be able to read and write the English language. They need to understand at the very least basic mathematics and algebra, right? And they need to know basic history. They need to know basic science. They at least need to know the scientific method, right? There are basics that they need to graduate and know, and they need to be able to, participate in society. And by coddling them, by not holding them to a high standard, you're setting them up for failure. So if your goal is to put them in a position where either they're going to go through like intense anxiety as soon as they get out into the real world, or you're going to cause them to try to find a way to not have to work and live off the state, like those are the two, but those are the two options. They're either going to go through this intense crisis as they figure out, crap, the real world is not nearly as coddling, or they're just going to be coddled by the state right? Those are the two options.
Yep.
And we're doing them a disservice. We should be trying to set them up for success, not failure.
Right.
And
in Maine,
I applaud you for holding them to a high standard.
Thank you. I'm not so sure that every student loves the fact that I hold them to a high standard, you know, and how
they don't like it in the moment. Well, have you ever seen you've seen Band of Brothers?
Yeah.
So Band of Brothers, the whole first episode is about this horrible, evil trainer, Sobel, right?
Yep.
And, you know, after the war, they hated him. They wanted to kill him, right? During their training. But after the war, do you think they wanted to kill him? Or do you think they were like, I'm so glad we went through a much more rigorous training because it prepared us for the reality of what was to follow?
Right. There's a reason why they were alive.
Right? There's a reason why they were the most highly decorated, unit in all of, World War II, and it's because of the rigorous preparation. Now, he would have been a terrible leader in the field as the show plays out, but he prepared them better than any other person prepared their units, which is why they tested better. And again, it's why they survived. And we need to be focused on making sure that our kids can survive the real world, not that they feel very happy and trying like good in the moment, right? Because that doesn't do them anyway.
It's one of the things that's really perplexing, right? Because you hear from the education commissioner here in Maine, and and she's talked about how kids need to feel safe and comfortable and valued and loved and all that stuff. Otherwise, they can't learn, right? And she talks about anxiety and depression. Look, anxiety and depression is at all-time highs. That's 100% true, right? I don't think it's because teachers are hard on kids. I think it's because teachers are not hard on kids. You meet an elementary teacher, they love on those kids, and they should. Elementary teachers should love on those kids 100%, but they should also have high expectations for them, right? It's love. I tell kids all the time, like, look, I'm not nice, but I'm kind. Imagine how unkind it would be to not hold you to a high standard, to just think that you're not capable of learning the mathematics to the level I want you to. Like, would that be kind? Would I be treating you kind if I just said, yeah, you're not really capable of it? And they're like, well, no, that'd be pretty mean. And I go, so I am being kind. You just don't like that it's not nice. There's a difference, right? And so we have to reconcile. If we want kids to be able to cope with their anxieties, right, then we need to constantly put them in difficult situations so they have to process it 100%. And find success. If we want kids to not have depression, then give them really hard tasks and get them to be successful at it. Because feeling successful is one of the best antidotes to depression there is. And it's day after day after day of feeling successful starts to erode away this idea of depression. Now, I'm obviously not talking about the people who are chronically depressed. That is a different category, but it's gone to such rampant levels. Not everyone is chronically depressed. Right? They spend more time looking at your cell phone. And then as you look into your cell phone, you're not pretty enough. You're not rich enough. You're not smart enough. You're not lucky enough. Every time you look into your cell phone, you're just being told what you are not, right? What everyone else has, but you don't. Well, it's pretty easy to get hopeless at that point, right? Instead of focusing on what you can do today. What can you do today, right in this moment, to be successful, to have a win? And then you just start stacking those wins. And next thing you know, you look back and you're like, damn, look how far I've come.
Yeah, as you accomplish difficult things, you grow confident, right?
Absolutely.
And if you haven't ever accomplished anything difficult, I don't care how nice everybody is around you, you still feel inadequate.
100%.
So what's their response? Well, medication. We've got to medicate away your feeling of inadequacy, right? That's not okay. That's a problem. We've got to medicate it. Well, the problem is you haven't fixed the problem. The thing that's causing them to feel that way still exists. That's going to continue to grow. Well, higher doses of medication or different medications or all the, rather than addressing the core root problem. And if you want to talk about those kids that have chronic depression and they have there is something that we need to do probably other than what we're currently doing to help those kids be successful and escape. I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but I have to believe that there are paths out of that, right? That they're not doomed And I don't think we should teach them that they're doomed to be
Absolutely.
chronically depressed for the rest of their life. I could have been described as being chronically depressed at one point in my life. And in college, before I found Jesus, I was
Yep.
at a place where I thought life was about surviving depression.
Right.
That was my perspective. So if that's not chronically depressed, I'm not quite sure what is.
Right.
But I guess whatever. And so, but the point is, and even if it's worse than that, I do think that there's hope. People can escape. They can get out of that. And I think one of the things that helped me build confidence was doing difficult things, like you said, right? And
Yep.
that actually helps their mental health and all these things. Not challenging them is telling them they're not good enough, they're not strong enough. Like that's what it's doing. We can say all the right words, but our behaviors, our actions speak so much louder than words. And so when we hold them to that high standard, we're telling them we think you're capable. We think you can do it, and we're going to show you that you can do it.
Right.
And then they do it. Yeah.
This idea of coddling is infecting other areas of our education system, not just the academics, right? We are so nervous that if we don't do what kids tell us they need or they want us to do, then they're going to, take their lives, they're going to go off the deep end, they're going to do all this stuff, right? Which has led to this initiative, right? That just says, hey, if I don't feel like a boy today, if I don't feel like a man, I'm just going to say I'm a girl, right? If I'm feeling effeminate, I'm a girl, or if I'm feeling masculine, I'm a boy, right? And it's this like, well, I can be whatever I want. And as soon as I want to be something, right? Then everyone else has to change their actions, right? And that's sick. I mean, we're talking about kids here, right?
Yep.
Adults make their own choices, right? Their brain is fully developed by the time they're in the mid-20s. They can understand the long-term consequences of decisions that they're making. And whether I agree or disagree, that doesn't mean anything, but they're an adult and I will respect their decision, right? Because they're a human and they deserve to be treated with respect, regardless, right? As long as they're not harming someone else. But to treat a kid with the same level of authority,
autonomy,
is sick.
It's absurd.
Right.
Just give them candy. They want cake. Just give them cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think we should do that because that's what they want. They've told us it's what they want.
And that's the craziness, right? Because that's a great analogy, right? It's just when I was in college, we went through developmental psychology, and what we learned about adolescence. Adolescence is a period of great stress and development and trying things and experimentation. They don't really understand risks. This is why they drive fast. This is why they jump off things. This is why they do all kinds of crazy things, because they're not really thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions, right? What could possibly happen? It's a combination of experience versus restraint, all these different things, right? So these kids are like, well, I'm not getting the attention that I want. Classic, true for developmental psychology. Adolescents want attention. So they're not getting all the attention that they want. So they find a group that will give them the attention for whatever they say, whatever they do. And the number of kids that say that they're one gender or the other, switch their genders and then switch back and they're trying to figure out how to go forward. Like they can't change in high school and then change back. Like the student body won't let them. Their peers won't let them. So when the school gets behind this and says, oh, we're going to let Alex be called, Alexandra, right? And then Alexandra is, Alexandra for a year or 18 months and now doesn't like being Alexandra and wants to be Alex. The social structure of schools is not going to let that kid come back. They are going to pick on right him for doing that. The only chance he has is to leave the community, leave the school, go find a new place and start new, right? And with social media, then you can't really do it because all the history of everything you've done is all there.
Yep.
Like the damage that we're doing, we're just not thinking long term for these kids. We should be the lifeguards on the side and just say, well, I see you're struggling, but you're not drowning. We're gonna keep watching you. And hey, Lifeline is here if you need it. We're here, right? We don't jump in the pool with them. We don't jump in the quicksand with them. And that's what I think a lot of what it has been in the name of safety, security, feelings, right? We've just lost sight of what's really important. And what we need to teach these kids more than anything is, life is hard and a lot of days suck, but the good days are worth living for, right? Yep. And that's the reality. right? Things don't fit right. Well, your body changes all the time. Wait for it to settle down in your mid-20s before you make any rash decisions. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Just let it play out. You know, it'll sort itself out in the end. You don't need to be in a rush.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think especially with this particular issue, it's like all of a sudden, as soon as it get the way that a significant portion of people operate is as soon as somebody brings this up, it's just affirm, affirm, affirm. There's no
Yeah.
questions. There's no
Right.
like trying to figure out why are you feeling that way. It's just like, okay, if that's who you say you are, then that's who you are. And who am I to judge? You know yourself better than I do. Therefore, we affirm. And like that's crazy. It's just not rational. It's not realistic. And we need to even if that is a thing that is possible, which I don't think that being born in the wrong gender is a thing. And
Right.
there are plenty of people who do. And again, I'm still, if you're an adult, you can do what you want. But with
Right.
children, you know, who again, we don't allow them to make so many decisions for themselves at that, at those ages that are much less significant than this. I don't think we should be starting with, let's affirm because otherwise, supposedly, we're told we're manipulated. They try to manipulate us. In fact, I was testifying last Thursday, up at the State House here in Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other people who was testifying on the other side and listening to some of the video and audio or whatever said that even having this discussion today is harmful to trans people, right? So they're manipulating us with compassion and kindness and whatever you want to call it, because that's what that crew does. And they have this ideology that if we even question whether or not like it's possible, which is what any rational person should do. And when all of human history, this is how the world has been, and all of a sudden people are like, no, it's more complicated than you think. And we're like, but wait, we have questions. Like, you're going to hurt people, you're going to cause people to commit suicide by asking those questions. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's called manipulation. Like, if you really honestly had great arguments and could prove the truth of what you believe, you don't need to use manipulation. You can use facts and statistics. I buy them. I love facts and statistics. Give me the studies that prove that children's mental health improves when you affirm.
Right.
By the way, they're not there.
Right.
Give me studies that prove that this reduces suicidal ideation and suicides. It's not there.
Yeah.
You have a losing argument. And so you're trying to manipulate these kids, and you're trying to get parents and adults and teachers and administrators to get on board with that train. And that, to me, not good.
Didn't the Department of Human Services come out with some information recently that pointed out that actually suicide rates are higher after kids have done the manipulation, their body mutilation, right? Once they've had surgery, that didn't make them feel better. It didn't make them suddenly feel better, and so their suicidal ideations actually increase because of this. Like,
correct.
Yeah.
Specifically, I don't know if this data was put out by the Department of Health and Human Services, but I do know that from the studies that are out there, that specifically with boys who transition to be girls and have that surgery, that segment in particular has the highest rate of suicide of anybody in the category, like whether they transition or don't transition. If they do transition and have the surgery, they have the highest rate of suicide.
Yeah. I mean, you wish we could just speak calmly and collected about it. You mentioned how it causes people to it's harmful, right? That's like saying if I walk around my community and I tell people I voted for Donald Trump, that it harms them.
Yeah. Well, it harms me.
I can't harm you by what I say, right?
Yeah.
By what I think. I can't harm you. You harm yourself. And if you are not that, if you're not that strong in understanding who you are, then you are going to allow everybody to dictate your feelings. And that's one of the things I teach kids all the time. No one has any power over your feelings except for you. If you're going to give someone space in your brain, to make you feel less than what you are, that you can't blame them for it.
Yep.
That's you. You have to take ownership of who you are and who you're going to allow space in your brain. Right? that's what it comes down to. And kids often remark, they're like, I never really thought about that way, or whatever it is. Like the kids, they're so malleable in high school. They really
Yeah.
are. They just want to try to figure out life, and they want to figure out life quick. And so as they make these decisions, they're incredibly impressionable, and you have to be so freaking careful, right? And so these things that are happening, it's really a problem, because the policies and practices of Maine schools, specifically the Mills administration, has been tragically detrimental to our students, tragically so, right? And they're not the only ones. I mean, my school district in Somerset has its own problems with this.
Yep. Where you work, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're in New Hampshire, where you work.
Yes, I teach in
Work in New Hampshire.
Yes.
Yeah, teach in New Hampshire. But so, so at the school board level, we kind of talked about what the role and responsibility of the school board is. And if you want to go into that a little bit more and talk about, like, because I think you mentioned that most school boards don't actually know what their role and responsibility is, and what's the role of the superintendent, and what's the what's the process, and what's being missed.
Yeah. So, all right. So school board members in the state of Maine have three responsibilities, right? It is to evaluate the superintendent. It is to write and implement policy, and it is to oversee the budget, right? Review, do every piece of the budget that comes down to that. So anything that's money related, grants, purchases, right? Receiving donations, anything that's money related needs to go through the board. It's the board's budget that's put out to the community, not the superintendent's budget, right? Policies are implemented by the superintendent, but they're not written by the superintendent. Now that's been taken over by Drummond and Woodsum, right? Because they essentially work with the MSMA, the Maine School Management Association. It's the Maine School Management Association that has this like repository of policies that board members don't have access to. As a matter of fact, only the chair of a school board and the superintendent have access to all the repository of all these policies, from what I understand. Yep.
That's wild.
Yep, it is. It's like this little secret bank, right? So, if you are looking to add a policy, it's like, oh, you have to state what you're looking for, and then they go into this bank of policies and like, oh, we think this one would be a good fit, and they put it in front of you and they say, what do you think? Do you want to adopt it? It's like, that's not how it goes. School board members are actually, adults are smart people. They should write policy, and then they can hand it off to their legal team and just say, hey, what do you think of what we've written? What concerns do you have? What are we setting ourselves up for regarding potential liability, right? That's the way it should go, but it's just the opposite now. It's like, hey, everything's like canned. And if you look at policies across Maine, the policies from district to district are very, very, very similar, because they've been written by Drummond and Woodson.
And like, I don't have a problem with having like resources to go to come up with policy, like, rather than having to write it all yourself.
Absolutely.
But like, who's writing it, and do they actually have our kids' best interests at heart?
Exactly. Well, who's
or
in control
not?
of who?
Right. Right.
The state, the legislature, vested the power of education into school boards, not into the superintendent. It was given to the school board, right? So the school board has incredible authority, really does. It has incredible authority, but boards don't act like it, because they don't take the time to get to know what they need to. All board members should read state statute, for sure, Title 20A. They should read state statute. They should read their policies, which are available on every single school district's website. Just read through the policies, right? Those two things are what most school board members are not aware of. They don't read them. And so when their superintendent suggests something, they don't know that that's not okay. And we've had that happen a number of times here in MSAD 60. And when it's brought to light, it makes everybody uncomfortable. And then, I'm made to look like the bad guy. And, geez, Josh, you just make everything so difficult. Well, we have rights and responsibility. We have I shouldn't say rights. We have authority and responsibility that we should hold and not give up, right? That previous board, in my understanding, previous board members have given up a lot of authority to the superintendent, and I don't think that's, or I wonder if that's consistent across Maine. If a lot of school boards have given up their responsibilities and their authorities over time to the role of the superintendent, and which puts us in a place like this, where superintendents are writing policies and protocols, such as in I can talk about this in MSAD 60. They have a protocol, right, and procedure to affirm students. They can use whatever bathroom, locker room that they want. If they want to change their name, they can change their name. And parents are only highly encouraged to be involved. They don't have to tell parents what's going on, right? That's not, we don't have policy that talks about that at all, right?
Really?
Yeah, we don't have policy about that at all. It just was a procedure and a protocol that was put into place because, a student had a question, and so they developed that. I'm not aware of that protocol or procedure being presented to the board whatsoever. I don't know what policy it's based on. And these are the things that drive me absolutely batty, and I could bring it up, right? I could bring all this stuff up, but then it's like, hey, Josh has this axe to grind, right? And it's not that I have an axe to grind. I don't think it's healthy for students, for sure, right? And I think there's lots of information that sides with that point of view. Although I'm willing to listen to other people's point of view, I can do that. But the reality is, we shouldn't have policies and we shouldn't have protocols and procedures that aren't based on policy, right? That's the reality. And this stuff was hidden pretty well. It came up in a FOIA request that I found out about. It wasn't my FOIA request that I found out about and read, and we're going to have to deal with that. But we got a lot of other things to deal with, and I'm not so sure that we have the majority of the board that would want to change that anyways right now. So that's we're hopefully working on that to give parents more of a say in their child's education, be more involved as far as, we're okay with it, not okay with it, and if you're going to do it, you need to let us know.
Yeah, and you're you're being criticized just for asking questions.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Oh gosh, yes.
Like, you're not there being a jerk trying to cause problems. Like, you are trying to cause problems in a sense, right? You want things to change.
Sure.
But like, you're just saying, hey, you're asking questions, and the law, and you're challenging their authority appropriately, which is something that and they're not open to that. Is that what am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because they see it as I'm just being difficult. Like, why don't you just trust our superintendent? It's not they often put it in a trust lens. It's not a trust thing, right? A board member's responsibility is to trust the superintendent. You need to have a good relationship, a good working relationship, but a board's job is to verify.
Right, trust but verify.
Right. If you don't verify by your questions, by your documentation, if you don't ask for those things, then you're not doing your due diligence as a board member.
Well, you have a fiduciary. You have a fiduciary responsibility. I don't know if fiduciary is the right word, but you have a legal responsibility as board members to ensure that what's happening in the school district, it's on their shoulders. Yes. It is on the superintendent, but it actually lies primarily with the school board members. Yes, and so they're at risk if they're not looking into this. So it's, it's not you being difficult outside of the fact that addressing what you're bringing up is not easy. It would be challenging. It would be difficult conversations, but it is necessary, and it is why they're on the school board, not just to be a rubber stamp for the superintendent.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, I've had the public come up, and some members of the public just come up and disparage me in front of the whole board, and the board is quick to take action on anyone else disparaging board members, but if it's me, it's like, hey, go for it. He deserves it. I've had board members, through social media, call me leader of the driver of a right-wing freight train causing cuts and chaos. I've been disparaged right, left. My own parents have been disparaged just because of the things that I do, right? And say,
really?
So, yeah. So, but it's funny, like, the name calling doesn't go the other way. It goes one way. Yet, they say people like me are the bullies. Like, it's unfortunate that people believe that stuff, right? I try to take the high road. I do ask hard questions, absolutely, right?
You should. Your job is to protect the kids and make sure that what's happening is what's supposed to be happening. Kids are being educated. Kids are safe. Yes.
Yep.
That's important. That's actually your job, and you should make sure that the policies that are being carried out are in line with what the board, with the people who are of your area want to happen in the school district. That is actually your job.
Yeah. I think I take my responsibility just as just as a community member, right? Most of these kids in the district, I truly don't know. I don't know their parents. I was away for 13 years, right? That's a significant amount of time to be away. And even when I was teaching in New Hampshire, I didn't live in North Berwick. So I've been away even longer than that. So I was away a long time when there was a lot of change in population. So, my work as a board member is not attached to any student or any family, right? It's about trying to create the best possible district for the best possible rate. It's return on investment. Everything I'm doing is about that, right? I don't have an agenda when it comes to a single item, whether I don't care if you want to talk about it as Excel or sports or any other popular initiative, right? I don't have any of those things. My whole goal is to say, how can we create the best possible experience for our students, best academically rigorous experience for our students at the best possible dollar? That's it. So I'm going to question everything we do. What programs are we adding? Why? What's the value? What do we know about it from other places? Right? These are the questions that we should be asking, and just go for that direction. And I don't think schools always do it best. I know it's a big push in Maine for Maine schools to do pre-K. I don't believe that that's the best thing, because education, like in the public education system, is the most expensive way to do it. I actually think most private pre-K providers do a fantastic job. They love these kids. They have fantastic relationships with the families because they've been serving that kid since they were, 8 months old, 9 months old, maybe a year, until 4 or 5 years old, right? They have that relationship. Well, let them continue. Why don't we partner with those pre-K as a public school? Why don't we partner? And we can. It absolutely allows it, but no, our school district recently just wanted to take it over. So these are the things that drive me nuts. They make it complicated, and I think that this is an important point to make. I think superintendents make it complicated so people like me or other dads with strong personalities don't run for school board, right? Because oh gosh, I don't know that much, so I shouldn't run for school board. I should wait for someone else. But here's the reality: if dads don't step up to run for school board, if and even moms with strong personalities, with some fire in their belly for wanting a better school system, if they don't run for school board because somehow they feel less qualified, I guarantee someone else is running for that position, and they are far less qualified than you.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Man, I'm losing my voice even worse. Well, I'll get this out at least. So you talked about dads, and one of the things I was really excited about, in particular with running into the boys and girls sports issue, is it's a time where our society, which seems to want men to shut up and not be involved, our society is against men because some men are oppressive and jerks.
Absolutely.
And therefore all men are bad. Masculinity is now toxic, all this crap. Right.
Yep.
And so I was excited with this issue. Like, what are you going to tell the dad of a daughter? You're going to tell him to not stand up for his daughter? Good luck. That's not going to go over very well. So I was really excited because of that, and with the Maine girl dad. So why don't you talk a little bit about, like, because that's another really cool thing that's kind of happened, is that there's a space now. If you're a guy, there's a space for you to stand up and do something where they can't stop you.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about the Maine girl dads. You are the face, I guess, of the Maine girl dads, we'll say.
I slowly becoming the face of Maine girl dads, right? And I pray that I can do it justice and represent the feelings of dads across Maine on this critical issue. And we are focused on that one issue, right? This is not a political endeavor at all. I think dads across the spectrum don't want males playing against their daughters in sports. Like, I'm a dad. I love sports. I think a lot of dads love sports, right? And if our daughters are so inclined to want to play sports, we want them to have a fair experience. Let it be fair, competitive but fair. And clearly, it's not, right? When you have males, I mean, they're different in every way: biologically, physically, morphologically, structurally, emotionally. Like, everything is different. I don't care how many drugs you take. Drugs don't change a person that much to be a completely different biological being. It just doesn't work that way. And so it's just, I just find it ridiculous, right? I find it absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, how it all started was, I was just doing my thing here, serving on the school board, being a teacher, working with my dad on the small homestead we have, just doing things like that. And I saw an email come through, that just said, hey, Maine Girl Dads, wants to know how you feel about, males playing, against your daughters in sports. And for full disclosure, my daughters are in Michigan. But I was like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Why would any dad, want to have males playing against their daughters? So I signed a petition. They asked for a little note there, and I just said, yeah, this is crazy. And, I just left a little stuff. Well, then I got contacted, and they're like, really like what you said. Would you be willing to like speak on behalf of Maine Girl Dads? And I was like, well, all right, I have no problem speaking. So that's how I ended up in Augusta. And then after that, it was like, hey, we're interested in you speaking more on behalf of Maine Girl Dads. So that whole process of turning things over to doing that is in process, and should be pretty, I would say within the next week or two. Hopefully people are going to see more from Maine Girl Dads, right? More through a little bit of social media, maybe more through email. But bottom line is I know that there are a few of us who want to wear our t-shirts, maybe get some other merch out there, and show up at sporting events, right? Especially this spring. This track competition's going on. There's a softball going on, and we'd love to visit some communities, and hopefully we can connect with some other dads who feel like we do. And we just want the whole community, think about community, school district, community, county, state, to know, like, we're here, right? We're right here. We don't approve of this. We want it changed. And dads aren't the most vocal ones. We're not one to carry a bunch of signs and go marching on the street and doing all that stuff. We just want our daughters to compete. We want our daughters to have access to privacy. My goodness, like, there's no reason why my daughters or any daughter should be exposed to male genitalia before we as dads are comfortable with that. I don't think a school district has a right to like change that without us. So it's just ridiculous. I think the majority of men out there know that it's ridiculous. I'm sure there are a few people who don't think it's ridiculous. I get it. You're allowed to have that view too, but that's not the majority view. And our school should operate based on what's in the best interest of the vast majority of our sons and daughters, and what's in the best interest of the vast majority of our sons and daughters is, single sex bathrooms, single sex locker rooms, single sex sports.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So guys, get connected. How do they get connected to the Maine Girl Dads?
That's awesome. So yeah, you definitely look up Maine Girl Dads on Facebook, look up Maine Girl Dads on X. We also have a website, Maine Girl Dads, so you can get connected there. Right now, there are something like 8,000+ people who are connected to Maine Girl Dads now. There's kind of been a little bit of a lull we went through this kind of a transition. So I hope everybody's just going to be patient with us, and we're not going to come out gangbusters. It's not what it's about. We just want to talk to other dads, right? And we want girls to know that their parents, right, are out there trying to stand up for them. I want to be clear. It's not against any student or athlete. That's not what it's about. If anyone wants to play sports, go for it. But there's girl sports and boy sports, right? So it's not against anybody. It is for, just saying girls here, boys there. This has been going on for decades. It's been highly successful. Title IX has been successful for decades in helping women, making sure that they are competitive, and that they earn scholarships to colleges and all that stuff. Let's not rock the boat. This is Title IX was a good thing, and it still is a good thing. Let's keep it as a good thing and stop messing with it.
100%. I'm with you. And I'm glad that there's something, and I'm glad people can get involved. But in general, we need more men to stand up, right? Like, that's the reality. I know it's difficult. I was a little disappointed at how few guys were. Geez, I can't even speak. I'm done. We're in Augusta, speaking up. We had a lot of teenage girls, a lot of young athletes, which I was really proud of. But we need more parents speaking up too. And I know that, like, in Augusta, it's like, well, what's the point? The Democrats are going to vote the way the Democrats vote, and we were outnumbered probably 3 or 4 to 1 anyway. But we need more people speaking up. We need to hear those stories of dads and the struggles that they have wanting to defend their daughters, but feeling handicapped by our society, legally and otherwise, and saying,
Yeah.
not only are they restricted from actually being able to do anything outside of pull their kids out of school or have their kids stop playing in sports, but they're also at risk of potentially losing their jobs,
Yeah.
or being discriminated against and for being, according to what they're going to be called, bigots and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Um, you
Yep.
know,
You're
you know,
bigot, you're misogynist, you're sexist, you're all kinds of things, right? But the name calling is rampant. As soon as you don't agree with someone, they can't actually debate the issue. They go to name calling and all that. It's horrible. But I think you made a really good point, right? Is it's hard for dads, especially dads. I hate to be a little stereotypical, but I'm going to be a little stereotypical here. Many dads are the protectors and providers of their family, right? And the number one way that we protect our families is by providing for them, right? And so when the legislature says, "Oh yeah, you can come up and speak," well, dads have to take a day off of work. There's a lot of dads who we don't have the liberty to just take a day off of work, right?
right,
And,
right.
to show up in
Parent,
Augusta.
yeah,
You have a lot of other people who it's their profession to speak that way, or you have a lot of moms who are able to be stay-at-home moms, which I think is great, right? So you have those opportunities, but dads, for the most part, dads are working, and they're not just working 40 hours a week. I have several friends of mine who are working 50 to 70 hours a week to provide for their households, right? It's not like they can just take time off, right? So it's just to say, oh, because they didn't show up, they don't care. Well, that's just bullshit. It's just,
right.
just absolute bullshit. Our society has made it incredibly hard for men to provide for their families, right? And so they're working so much, and they're distracted. And they just want to go to a sporting event. I mean, they're already making sacrifices. They're leaving their jobs early, right, to go see their daughters playing sports. And then they see, a male competing against them, and they're like, "What the heck?" And they're aggravated and they are upset at that time. But then it's like, "Oh yeah, hey, why don't you just head up to Augusta on this day?" It's like, I can't do that. So what it is really about letting people know, like, you're not alone. I think the biggest thing is dads need to know that they're not alone. What kind of a pack animal, right? Yeah, we can lone wolf it at times, absolutely, when we need to, but we like being in a pack. I mean, when guys hang out, you go to any invite, it's like kind of like we just have a pack mentality. We enjoy. We pick on one another, right? We like busting on one another. We love that stuff, right? We love telling jokes. We do that. We don't do our own thing. So I think once enough dads know, like, hey, you're not alone, right? You're a Maine girl dad too. That's great, And once you get that, then it's like, okay, hey, we can go to our school board because we're not driving to Augusta. We can go to school board. We can affect things locally, and that's Maine girl dads is all about just keeping it small and letting that wash over. Hopefully we can get candidates who want running for school board or city councils and things like that are Maine girl dads. So it's really about we need Maine girl dads to step up, right? So this is kind of it's a call to action, because if we don't step up now, we may not recognize. I mean, Maine's changed a lot since I left. Like, oh my gosh, if you've been a frog in the water, if you've been here for the last 30 years, the whole time, you're a frog in water. Maine has drastically changed in the last 30 years, and not in any good ways. So to all the men out there who have lived and grown up in Maine, we have to stop. We have to stop, and we need to we need to stand up. We need to start advocating for morals and values that make sense, common sense, that provide for our daughters and provide for a wage where people can live, right? All those different things. Like, men need to step up, and I'm not putting down women at all. I don't want to be accused of that whatsoever, because I'm not. My mother is one of the strongest people I know, and I love her to death. She's fantastic, right? And there are so many women who are super strong. I have friends on the school board who are women, and they are fantastic, right? But there's an absence of men. I am the only male on a 9-person school board, right? In my school that I work in, it's mostly females, right? In a lot of other areas, it's mostly females, and it's because dads aren't stepping up, and we need to. We need to step up.
Yeah, we need to push back against this societal thing that's trying to erase us and eliminate us. Like, it's horrible
Yeah.
that it's happening, but then we're also giving into it. Going back to like when I was a kid and I was like on TV, where could you find a positive display of a man?
Mhm.
Like most shows, it was like all the men were idiots,
Right.
drunks. They
Right.
didn't care. They didn't care about the important things, and they were just selfish.
Right.
And women were all good. And there's been an assault on men and an
Right.
assault on the family, whole nother story.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
But we men need to stop backing down and stop
Yeah.
ceding ground to this
Right.
insanity, and we need to
Right.
get involved. We need people on the school board. So men out there, we need you to run for school board. We need you to have the courage
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
take the difficult questions, because our kids are worth it.
Our kids are
I think
totally
that's
worth it.
the bottom line. So,
And it's not, you know
all
what?
right.
I want to leave with this. It's not just our own biological kids that are worth it. Our neighbors' kids are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our community's kids are worth it. Like, if we need to fight for the next generation, because if we don't fight for the right generation and start giving them the rigor that I was talking about earlier in this podcast, right? Start demanding of them excellence in school, right? Demanding that they go through the tough days and rise above it. If we don't do that to this next generation, if we don't take the stance and get in those positions to cause that to happen, we're going to end up with another generation of entitled, coddled kids that are not going to help our society at all. So it is a siren call to men. Please, please, please step up, get involved, get a hold of the Maine Education Initiative, right? You know, certainly reach out to me, Maine Girl Dads. You know, we're going to be more vocal in getting out there, and let's get our state headed in the direction that we were in the 90s. You know, and we can even do better than the 90s. So I say let's do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And if you guys like the podcast and want to support, there's a QR code up in the top right. You can buy some cool merch like this, this great Muddy Waters hat, tons of stuff on there. Please check it out. So as I like to say, so we can lose less money on this podcast, because it does cost money and I don't make money, in case you're wondering. So in fact, yeah, I've spent a lot of money buying my own merch, and so I'm, hundreds of dollars, in on my own money just to buy the merch. So it's not something, because I like to test it out, and I also like it. I want to wear it out in public and stuff like that. Anyway, but we're not making any money. But if you could support us, so that help us, enable us to continue doing this, that would be great. And we'll be back here on Monday. Hopefully I have a voice by then. And you guys have a great weekend. Again, thank you so much, Josh. People, we need to step up, because if we don't, not only is that next generation going to fail, but our society is going to be dangerously close to collapsing as we push out more and more people who just can't do the jobs and the work, and are not willing, you know what I mean? Because they've not been trained, they've not been, encouraged or challenged the way that they need to. As more and more of this happens, we're edging closer and closer to our societal collapse. As much as that sounds grim, it's a reality. So all right, well, thank you so much again, and we'll see you guys all here next week.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Josh.
much. You got it.